the final whisper of betrayal. My name is David Thompson, and this is a story I never thought I would have to tell. It's a story of love, betrayal, and the cold, dark ending that no one saw coming. I met Sarah when I was 28. I was working as a civil engineer, spending most of my days on construction sites and my nights at home alone. Sarah was introduced to me by a mutual friend at a dinner party. She was beautiful, with long auburn hair, sparkling green eyes, and a laugh that could warm the coldest of hearts. She was charming and confident, the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. We connected instantly. Our relationship blossomed quickly, and within a year I had asked her to marry me. It was a grand proposal: roses, candles, and a ring that cost more than my car. She said yes, tears streaming down her face, and we began to build our life together. We bought a house in the suburbs, a place that would be perfect for the family we planned to have one day. It was everything I had ever wanted. Sarah was a loving wife, always there to support me, and our home was filled with laughter, warmth, and love. It was 2 years into our marriage when I first noticed the change. Sarah became distant, distracted. She started staying out late, claiming to be at work functions or out with friends. At first I didn't question it, I trusted her completely. But as time went on, the excuses became more frequent, the stories less believable. I remember one evening vividly. She came home late, her eyes bloodshot, smelling faintly of alcohol, and something else I couldn't quite place. I asked her where she had been, and she brushed me off, saying it was just a work thing. But something in her voice didn't sit right with me. I began to suspect that something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. How could the woman I loved, the woman I married, be capable of something so deceitful? I pushed the thoughts away, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. My suspicions were confirmed on a rainy Wednesday afternoon. I had come home early from work, hoping to surprise Sarah with dinner. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in front of the house. My heart sank. I walked up to the front door, my hands shaking, and quietly let myself in. The house was eerily quiet, except for the faint sound of laughter coming from the living room. I walked toward the sound, each step feeling heavier than the last. And then I saw them, Sarah, and a man I had never seen before, sitting on the couch, too close, laughing at something I couldn't hear. The way she looked at him, the way she touched his arm, it was clear that this wasn't just a friendship. My worst fears had come true. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. They didn't even notice me at first, so wrapped up in each other. It wasn't until I finally managed to say her name that they looked up, their faces draining of color. David. I can explain, she stammered, but I didn't want to hear it. I turned and walked out of the house, the sound of her voice fading behind me. That night Sarah came to me, tears streaming down her face. She admitted everything. His name was Mark, a colleague she had been seeing for months. She claimed it started as a mistake, something that spiraled out of control. She begged for my forgiveness, swearing that she loved me and that she would do anything to make things right. But how could I forgive her? The woman I had devoted my life to, the woman I had trusted with everything, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, hurt, confusion. I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. I couldn't even look at her. I told her to leave, to go stay with a friend or anyone else. I needed time to think, time to process everything that had happened. She left, sobbing, and I was left alone in the house that now felt like a prison. Days turned into weeks, and the pain didn't fade. I couldn't escape the images of Sarah and Mark together, couldn't stop hearing her voice in my head, telling me that it was just a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. A choice that she made, knowing full well what it would do to me. Sarah tried to reach out to me, sending messages, calling, even showing up at the house, but I ignored her. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing her, of hearing her voice again. I sank deeper into myself, isolating from friends, from family, from the world. I started drinking more than I should have, trying to numb the pain, but it only made things worse. The more I drank, the more the anger grew inside me, festering like a wound that wouldn't heal. And then, one night, she came back. It was late, past midnight, when I heard the knock at the door. I was drunk, too drunk to think clearly, but I opened it anyway. There she was, standing in the rain, soaked to the bone, her eyes pleading with me. "David, please." "Just talk to me," she said, her voice trembling. I stared at her, a mix of anger and sadness boiling inside me. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to cheer her excuses. But she wouldn't leave. She stepped inside, dripping water onto the floor, and tried to take my hand. "I love you, David. I made a mistake, but I love you. Please, let's just talk." I snapped. The anger, the betrayal, the hurt, all of it came crashing down on me at once. I pushed her away, harder than I meant to, and she stumbled backward, slipping on the wet floor. She fell, hitting her head on the edge of the table with a sickening thud. I froze, the world around me going silent. She lay there, motionless, blood slowly pooling around her head. I dropped to my knees beside her, panic gripping me. "Sarah, Sarah, wake up," I shouted, shaking her, but she didn't respond. I called 911, my hands trembling so badly that I could barely dial the number. When the paramedics arrived, they tried to revive her, but it was too late. Sarah was gone. The days that followed were a blur. The police questioned me, but they believed it was an accident. No charges were filed, but the guilt weighed on me like a stone. I was a broken man, hollowed out by grief, by guilt, by the knowledge that my actions, however unintentional, had led to Sarah's death. I sold the house, unable to live in the place where everything had fallen apart. I moved away, leaving behind everything I knew, everyone I cared about. I couldn't face them, couldn't face the reminders of the life I had lost. I'm living in a small apartment now, in a city where no one knows me, where no one knows my story. I spend most of my days alone, lost in thoughts that I can't escape. The memories of Sarah haunt me, the sound of her laughter, the touch of her hand, the look in her eyes the night she died. I often wonder what might have been if things had gone differently. If I had been a better husband, if I had forgiven her, if I had never opened that door. But it's too late for what ifs. The past is a shadow that I can't outrun. They say time heals all wounds, but I'm not sure that's true. Some wounds cut too deep, leave scars that never fade. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself for what happened, for the part one played in Sarah's death. But life goes on, even when you don't want it to. And so I continue, a shadow of the man I once was, carrying the weight of my sins with me every step of the way. This is my story. A story of love, betrayal, and a final whisper of forgiveness that will never come.